Before week 3 of the NFL season begins, you should try and improve your team. It sounds pretty simple, right? But being active can actually go a long way. So in this video, we're going to talk about the top 10 players you should be trading for right now in your fantasy football leagues. If this is your first time here, I'm Joe. I've done over 1 billion views in fantasy sports over the last decade, but more importantly, I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy league, and I plan to do the same in this video. But I always start with the top NFL news stories and why they matter for fantasy football so that I can give you guys some value right off the bat. And then I hit my 5 favorite YouTube comment questions from the last video. It's the best way to reward smart comments and boost engagement. Finally, I dive into today's one key topic, aka the reason that you clicked, give you exactly what you came here for. But let's jump right into today's news. The number one thing I'm focused on right now is Jaden Daniels and this knee sprain. It looks like he's not expected to practice until at least Friday. So Marcus Mariota is expected to start in week 3. Dan Quinn said that the rehab is going well so far, but they're still holding Daniels out of practice. Mariota is the interesting part of this because of some of the effects on the team. Obviously, Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz are going to be downgraded, mostly because Mariota didn't throw a ton last year, but he ran a bunch. So I think this is kind of an interesting way to go about this week if you need a quarterback in a really bad way. I think Mariota is kind of an interesting spot start for fantasy owners as well, depending on what you may have just lost at quarterback. We have a lot of quarterback injuries right now, but I definitely expect more of like a run-leaning game plan for sure. One of the quarterbacks that you may be looking to replace, including myself in this category, is Justin Fields, who is officially out for week 3. We'll see if he's back for week 4, but Tyrod Taylor is going to be taking the reins here for the Jets. Ruled out midweek is always nice because we can plan, and obviously they get more time to game plan Taylor in. I don't think a ton really changes. Maybe they lean even harder into the run, which affects guys like Garrett Wilson, who's probably closer to like a wide receiver 3 with Tyrod. It's an interesting one because I think I still prefer Mariota this week. Obviously, a really strong matchup for him. Tyrod's an interesting one, though, just because he does give us a lot with his legs as well. I think we probably just break ties with the more efficient offense with Mariota personally. But just looking at this, Tyrod is a guy that has been pretty good for us in the past. He just hasn't shown a ton most recently. So I think for me, I think if you are in like a really tough spot, Tyrod could be like a spot starter, but we're hoping to get Justin Fields back as soon as possible, obviously. We're officially on rookie watch in Denver. Sean Payton called RJ Harvey an important piece of the offense. Usage hasn't really popped yet for this guy. 11 carries, 3 targets through 2 games. J.K. Dobbins leading the way there from a volume perspective. But Payton's talked up Harvey's role to reporters, which is something that I'm paying attention to. At the very least, I'm trying to have some patience here. I think if his snaps tick up, he's still got the workload and the talent in general to be a factor in fantasy. So I think for me, he's kind of like a forward-looking bench hold right now. But it's nice to see this stuff in the media that Sean Payton is still thinking about this guy, and I'm not giving up any hope just yet. San Francisco looks to be getting healthier, which is good. Brock Purdy has a chance to play this week per Kyle Shanahan. He's missed last game, obviously, with that toe issue, but slated for more limited practice, did some throwing. The toe's been a bigger limiter, it sounds like, than the shoulder lately, but keeping an eye on both of those things, practice reports before locking him back into lineups. But to me, if he's in, that stabilizes the Niners' passing outlook quite a bit. I guess the only other thing to note with Purdy is that it looks like Shanahan's kind of getting out ahead of a potential quarterback controversy. He said it doesn't really matter how Mac Jones plays. It doesn't affect whether Brock Purdy is going to be playing in week 3 or going forward. So nice to throw some cold water on that, though not super unexpected, I guess, but interesting. Speaking of interesting, it sounds like the design runs for Jalen Hurts are coming. Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, has said that they haven't been able to use Hurts in this way yet because of how defenses are loading the box, but not to worry. So for fantasy, that's huge. If Hurts can start running a little bit more, saves his weekly floor, maybe they can get this whole Eagles offense kind of back on track. I'm going to move quickly through these last few pieces of news. Christian Kirk back this week. Looks like him and Braxton Berrios, both who have missed time with hamstring issues, are going to be back to playing against the Jaguars. So that's interesting just because Kirk, if he's back in, immediately kind of slides into that big target role. And then Ian Rappaport is telling us that the Vikings are placing running back Aaron Jones on the IR with a hamstring injury. So out for at least 4 weeks, won't return until after the Vikings week 6 bye. If you can stash him on an IR spot, great. But for now, Jordan Mason has a real chance to take over this backfield. We'll see if he can continue once Aaron Jones is back. And then Christian Watson, kind of an interesting one to keep like tabs on as well, says that he fully expects to return to practice when his PUP window opens up in week 6. So he even joked, I guess, that if they were in the NFC Championship game tomorrow, that he'd be ready to go. This could be like a late season boost for the Packers passing game, and anyone willing to stash him until then. All right, let's jump into some Q&A. Got some good ones for you guys today. Drop your questions below this video as a comment, and I'll try and get to as many of them as I can going forward. Number 1, do you think Burrow can make it back for the fantasy playoffs? Anything's possible, but it doesn't look great. I would say that. Adam Schefter already reported that he's going to need surgery. It's going to sideline him for a minimum of 3 months. I will say this, though. Zach Taylor said that he hasn't ruled him out for the season just yet. So if you have an IR spot on your league, you could hang on to him. But yeah, I wouldn't bank on him coming back for the fantasy playoffs personally. Second question. Start sit shows, always good, but one thing is time. Almost every YouTuber is doing it on Sunday morning, so I'm always switching back and forth, dropping questions in the chat. Still good, but something to know. Yeah, I appreciate this feedback, man. This is, if you're here for the first time, I'm debating doing a start sit show on Sunday mornings. So I already do a DraftKings and FanDuel position by position, build a lineup at the end show every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. Thinking about adding like a Q&A live portion to my Sunday morning live stream schedule. It would probably be directly after that, around 10 a.m. Eastern time. I'm thinking I'm probably going to start that not this week, but the week after, because I want to be able to let the people know on my live stream that that's going to be coming. But also let me know in the comments if you would like to see that, because it's something I'm debating still a little bit from a time perspective. Just have to be thoughtful, but would love to answer some more questions live, like directly before kickoff, if you guys are up for it. But this is good to know that there's a lot of competition, I guess. But happy to keep considering that. Like I said, probably start this in week 4. That's the plan. Cool. Really interesting situation here. My running back room goes as follows. Kyron, Tony P, Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, Tajay Spears, Blake Corum. Let's see what we got. Judging off the information in this video, I need to pick him up. Do you think I should drop either Kareem Hunt or Tajay Spears? Yeah, I guess I don't necessarily think you should drop anyone immediately. Pacheco has been pretty disappointing. 18 touches. I think he's at like 3.1 yards per carry. Yeah, I mean, he does play the Giants this week, who've given up TDs on the ground the first 2 weeks. But if the Chiefs go up, Pacheco still might grind some clock in this game. So I think you're right to be concerned about him. But I think you can wait one more week. I know you have some Chiefs concerns here, which is fair. But yeah, I think I would wait out a little bit longer, my man, for sure. Do you think Omarion Hampton is done and Najee will take over after Omarion's lackluster performance? Yeah, the touch share going in half basically from week 1 to week 2. The efficiency dipped as well. Yeah, it's not great. It's definitely early, but until that burst shows up, the door is definitely open for Najee Harris to keep cutting in. The problem with this situation is Najee is going to be a thorn in his side the whole year. He's like a guy that coaches trust if he can get back on the field in like a meaningful way. I think that's always going to be an issue with Hampton. But that said, like Hampton coming in has everything you want from a starting running back in this league coming in as a rookie. And it's been interesting to see the Chargers throw so much this year. So that should be playing to Omarion's strength as well, as he's really good in the passing game. But yeah, it's not great overall. But just 2 NFL games under his belt, I think things could definitely change fast. He's still getting like all the goal line work, which is good. And the scheme in general, like you would think, would reverse course a little bit and be a little bit more run heavy. But we'll see on that. We'll see. Literally none of these players are available on my waiver wire. Can you do a deep dive waiver wire edition? That'd be really helpful. Yeah, man, appreciate your question. I would say in terms of the deep dive waiver wire stuff, I try and keep that to my membership community. So the Fantasy Accelerator, you can check it out, link in the description. This is where I answer everyone's questions individually. Obviously, there's a 3-part to this: draft season, in season, and off season. So it's 365, get you guys covered. We're in the in season mode right now. So basically everything that you would need to win your league. I try and keep most of the stuff that's like a deeper dive into the different positions, waivers, trades, all of that. That is behind the membership. So I want to make sure I'm providing them as much value as possible. We have office hours as well, where you can ask me questions directly. But yeah, the reason for that is I try and keep that a little bit more of a smaller group so they can get my full attention, basically. But these videos will always kind of give you guys what I think are the best ones. But yeah, if I guess for deeper leagues might not be as useful at times. I'll try and find some sort of happy medium there, my man. But I would check out the Fantasy Accelerator. Also, if you're just looking for like rankings, I give away my top 150 rankings for free, top150free.com. Again, link in the description for that. You put your email in here, you get my rankings. So there's plenty of free stuff out there. I guess is what I'm getting at there. So hopefully that's helpful. If Jordan Mason is somehow on waivers, he's obviously a must add with Aaron Jones on the IR. Yeah, I mean, I hope he's not on waivers in your league. He was one of the guys that I was aggressively telling you guys to draft late in fantasy, but hopefully you guys have him and you're in a pretty good spot now. I know I've got him on a couple teams and I'm pretty happy about that situation. All right, everyone's favorite portion of the program. Today's one key topic, aka the reason that you click, 10 players that will win you your league. Trade for them now. So I'm talking about my 10 guys that I'm targeting in trades at the moment. Let's go ahead and whiteboard this out. We got 10 players to talk through today. Obviously, the first player, he's on the thumbnail. Let's talk about Chase Brown. No Joe Burrow. What do we do with Chase Brown? What do you guys think I'm going to say here, right? What matters the most at the running back position? It's volume, guys. The volume is still going to be there. Maybe we should decrease the touchdown expectation, but volume is king. And at least from weeks 1 to 2, he's basically had a monopoly over these touches. Exactly what we want to see from our RB1. Yeah, maybe you should limit some ceiling here, but if someone is completely panicking in their league about Chase Brown with no Joe Burrow the rest of the way, I think this is an opportunity. The team doesn't really have any strong alternatives for carries, so the path of least resistance keeps touches with Brown, and if Browning ends up not being as efficient through the air, we could just see a ton of volume here, and I do really like it. The part of this that's, I guess, good and bad is that there's kind of been some ugly efficiency. That's the part that probably won't change. So I guess we'll go sad face on that one. But it is, I guess, an efficient spot to be buying a player like this, right? His price is down. So the price is down, but the role, if anything, is intact or at least going up. So I think that this is a buy window for him. I think they can design this offense around him. Because he can be so effective in the passing game as well, but also be like that safety valve for an offensive line that isn't great. But when things break down, I think he could rack up a ton of catches with this skill set and maybe even be split out wide a little bit more. I know the coaches have talked a little bit about that, just how versatile he is, all of that. I mean, when he was featured last year, guys, running back 5 pace. So I keep going back to that when he was getting like 95% of the backfield touches. I think he's proven ceiling when volume condenses, if that makes sense. So if they're really going to design a lot of stuff around him with their backup quarterback, I do think that Chase Brown is a guy that I'd be trading for right now. So to me, I think the question is, do we want a workhorse at a discount? And to me, I do. Even without Joe Burrow at quarterback, I think this is a situation where if you didn't draft him in like the end of the second round, beginning of the third round, and someone is panicking and you basically have to move a 4th, 5th round asset to get him, maybe a couple options that are in like the mid-range of your team in order to get a Chase Brown as like your 2nd or 3rd running back, I think it's a home run. So this week, one of my favorite picks is actually Chase Brown for higher rushing yards. The Vikings have given up more rushing yards to anyone through 2 weeks. Since we're talking about making picks, I'm teaming up with DraftKings Pick 6 to give new customers a deal you won't want to miss for week 3. When you play $5 or more on your first paid Pick 6 entry, you'll get $50 in bonus picks instantly. That's right, play $5, get $50 in bonus picks to keep building your slips and take your shot at big payouts. Just download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, sign up using my promo code HOLKA, and start playing today. If you've been thinking about trying Pick 6, now's the time to get in. Just use my code HOLKA to sign up, and all new DraftKings customers can play $5, get $50 in bonus picks instantly. Let's build some slips. Let's move on to our second guy. Number 9, guys that I'll be trading for. It's a wide receiver this time. Courtland Sutton. These Denver Broncos are going to be the end of me this year, but I do like the idea of trading for Courtland Sutton. I'm going to tell you why. I got four main things that I want to bring you through here, per usual. So to me, what's crazy is he's the only full-time or full complement of snaps wide receiver in this offense right now. So last year he had 587 routes. No other Denver wide receiver cleared 315. So it really just consolidated around him in general, at least from a target share perspective for Peyton in this rotation. Also, even in kind of like a running back, tight end tilted system, Sutton's still projected for like a 20% target share each and every week. So the volume still funnels his way no matter what. His role is super safe. And realistically, like the wide receiver 2 through 5, like we don't know what we're going to get from Mims at times. Like we just don't know. So it's basically like a rotational, I guess, wide receiver core in general. So if this room stays super spread out while Sutton's on the field doing his thing, I think from a macro perspective, he makes a lot of sense. And then anytime we get like a week 2 dud and people are panicking, it to me is a buy window if the role stays the same, which I think it will. So 1 catch, 6 yards, 4 targets, not great, right? But Bo Nix has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league to start the year. I don't think that that's a surprise to anyone that if he was struggling, Courtland Sutton would obviously be struggling as well. But they've had some pretty tough matchups to start the season. So I think that the passing game in general is going to swing back a little bit. But the part about Sutton that's so great is like the red zone alpha nature of this role, right? He's so good going up from a contested catch perspective. 31.8% of red zone targets, 45.9% of end zone throws in 2024. So the touchdown equity is really what you're trading for. And I don't think you would have to give up a ton in order to get him, right? So to me, this is probably the last chance to get him at this spot. I keep hitting that button. And it moves me all the way from my pen to an eraser. I should figure that out. Okay, so this is the last chance that you're going to be able to get him, I think, at this type of value. So this offensive line is going to get healthier. I think that even with like a really tough schedule, they have the 7th toughest passing schedule this year. The consolidation, the red zone roll, everything else that we've talked about, I think makes him a buy for me. So if you can trade for Courtland Sutton now, I think just like based off of what we saw in week 2 in the box score, and if you can get him at a discount for that type of touchdown equity, I think it's worth it personally. So those are my first 2 guys. Number 8, we're going to go back and forth from running back to wide receiver, back to running back to wide receiver. So we got another running back for you. Another guy that I've drafted everywhere pretty aggressively. Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is a guy that I would be aggressively trading for going into week 3. Here's why. Again, you're going to hear me say it at the running back position all year. Workhorse, volume. We don't get that with every single player at this position, this workhorse volume. So in week 2, he was the only Titans running back to record a touch, 20 carries, 92 yards. He's the undisputed lead back in this offense. Week 2, 18 of the team's 21 running back rushes, plus had a 29-yard catch, early down volume, chunk receiving, all of those things are good. So really high workload as long as Tajay Spears remains out. So I think the window to buy is now because, I mean, we're eventually going to get Tajay Spears back, right? So I think once that happens, the window to buy him, I think at this, like, we want to get this workload now, to me. And I would say that what's interesting about this offensive line too, I don't think people realize this offensive line is pretty good. So it really helps out with just the efficiency in general of this running game. And I think they're going to run a ton of plays. So with a rookie quarterback, I think that there might still be some more rushing volume on the bone here. And Cam Ward, honestly, has not been amazing either to start the year. But I think that Pollard in particular is still in a pretty good situation to succeed. So I think if we were to like project out the touches in this offense, even if Tajay Spears gets back, I think they still want like a third guy that's going to be kind of like a short yardage type of guy. So like the bear case here is I think that his TDs are probably a little bit capped. but the workload is still going to be extremely strong from a floor perspective. So the floor that you can get from Pollard, I think, is the reason that you should trade for him. Basically, like a 20 touch RB, and we haven't quite seen the TDs catch up yet. TD, that's what I wrote. Very scientific. But I think once the TDs do kind of catch up to this volume, he's going to be a guy that you can trade for cheaper now than you'll be able to in the future. Number 7, Terry McLaurin. This is a guy, I don't have a ton of Terry McLaurin just because I think there was like a lot of signs for regression coming into this season. But I do think if people are panicking with this Jaden Daniels injury, that Terry McLaurin might be a decent guy to trade for at the moment. So this team, we know they're going to play at a really up-tempo pace. Check that off. We know that they're going to skew pass heavy. Check that off. 8 straight games with a positive pass rate over expectation last year once Daniels got healthy. So the coaching, they just trust him in general, which is going to lift the wide receiver volume. But the reason that you can buy low on this, well, one of the reasons, is that I think with Jaden Daniels potentially out this week, we're going to see a pretty run-heavy game plan. So if there's one more dud, I think you could probably grab him now, but if there's one more dud, you might be able to get that in as well, just in time for Jaden Daniels to come back. But I think they might be run-heavy for at least this week. So an opportunity that if you want to use that to get him now, I think it makes some sense. But the TD profile, part of this was why we were so nervous with the regression, right? People don't score this many touchdowns with the amount of volume that he got last year. Obviously, second in the NFL in receiving TDs last year, still their top red zone option. So the scoring role is intact. But if you're bracing for that regression, the fear, I guess you could still be using that fear to get like a discount in a trade. There's a difference between spending a draft pick on someone and trying to trade for someone that you think still has value after a couple bad weeks, right? So I think the quiet start that he's had, I think a lot of people probably saw this coming because of the regression, but it is an opportunity to potentially have a window to grab this guy. And then if things end up regressing back towards the upside that we saw last year, it ends up being basically one of the last opportunities that you can get him for cheap. So maybe the last week you can get him for cheap, depending on how injured Daniels ends up being. But yeah, I think that the opportunity to start aggressively starting conversations with this owner is now. Number 6, Tayvon Henderson. I guess a guy that I have a ton of, and also a guy that I think the box score doesn't do him justice so far, at least the split with Ramondre. So let's get into that. Let's get into it. So I think the tempo and like competence of this offense is something that I don't think enough people are talking about, right? So New England's playing fast. They're playing fast, and you'll hear me talk about tempo and stuff like this a lot. There's 2 things that I really care about: volume at running back, but also efficiency at quarterback, because we know that matters more than volume. And then at wide receiver, we want a little bit of both, if that makes sense. So I think since they've been playing fast, McDaniels has been, I guess, expected to continue that trend over the course of this season. So more snaps, more running back targets, all of those things. Week 2, obviously the offense did well against Miami. Pretty much everyone does well against Miami, sustained drives, all of that. The offensive line has actually been much better than I think people expected. So they kind of retooled this offensive line coming into the season. That's another thing that I pay attention to a lot because we're talking about efficiency at quarterback. What leads to the efficiency going down? A lot of times it's pressure, right? So offensive line matters for not just running backs, but quarterbacks as well. So I think the role that's interesting here is the PPR ceiling because of the talent. He's basically just like a big play in a bottle, right? Think about Ramondre Stevenson and the opposite of that. So like Ramondre can still catch passes, all of that. I shouldn't say he can't make big plays. He already has done that this year. But in general, I think the coaches already know as they're like evaluating everything that as soon as like they're not giving Tayvon enough opportunities, they're missing a lot of like explosive elements that they can add to this offense, right? So I think he's already proved that there's flashes, proved that in the preseason, but also at times this year, right? So in week 1, only 2 fewer carries than Stevenson, 6 receptions. So there was really some immediate trust here, which I think is nice. The trust that you need, I guess, for me to trade for a guy like this early in the season. Like there's some guys that I'm moving away from quickly, but there's other guys where we've already seen some trust, right? I think that matters. It's like a perception flip in your head. So the per touch upside, it honestly compares to like a Gibbs, Achan type of role, right? So like these are the type of like fragile players in like an ambiguous backfield that can really pop up and end up being like league winners down the stretch for you if an injury happens or if he ends up getting more of a sustained role, all of those things, right? So I think to me, like he was kind of like that sexy draft pick. Now he's kind of like a guy that people have on their bench. They're not sure if they can start him. I think he ends up being like one of the best stashes in all of fantasy right now. Because if he ends up really capturing this like ceiling through the air and breaks off some big plays, or I guess even if there ends up being some sort of injury here, this is like one of the situations that I think stands out as like one of the best ones. If you have room on your bench to stash him for a little bit and you can trade him on the cheap with an owner that drafted him with a lot of hype, that's a little bit frustrated. I think that this is one of the better opportunities to trade for him. We might be talking about some of these players in multiple weeks, so the window hasn't closed on all of them just yet, but he'd be a priority for me. This one's a little bit, I might get some flack for this one. Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. This has been a scary start. As a guy that loves Brian Thomas Jr., this has been a really scary start. We'll get it. The scary part about this is that the volume has been there. So why would we be trading for a guy like this? Heavy volume. And really light payoff. The light payoff is the reason that you can get him much cheaper than people drafted him, right? So 19 targets through 2 weeks. Can you guys take a guess on where he ranks right now? Wide receiver 54. Wow, that is horrible handwriting. Wide receiver 54 with 19 targets. That's pretty crazy. So in week 2, he had 12 targets, 4 catches for 49 yards. Touchdowns have gone to everyone else basically so far, though. And they want to talk about this wrist issue too. Wrists, hands, feet, like I feel like this stuff does really matter when it comes to the wide receiver position, right? But the rookie resume, so let's just say the resume, still to me says that he's an elite player in this league, right? So he's basically in the same cohort, like that last year, that stretch from like week 11 to week 18 or so with like a 34% target share. This is with Mac Jones, by the way, at times. That alpha volume is like kind of independent of the quarterback pretty clearly, but he was like in the cohort of guys like OBJ, AJ Brown, Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Chase, like all of those guys in their rookie season. Like he was right there with some of those guys, right? So two weeks later, I'm not willing to kind of write that off. And I think there's a chance that like the Cohen stuff still matters. He basically funnels offense to his stars. He's come from like the offense of like just giving Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all of that work to like their best players, right? So moving BTJ around, moving him inside, the tempo, the offense in general, kind of leaning more pass heavy. Like there's a lot to like here. One of the things not to like is this O-line has been pretty rough. It's been kind of a liability, but I think the way that like he wants to scheme volume to BTJ should mitigate that a little bit. Like some of these like screen game type of plays, easy throws, all of that. So I think the risk is probably the inefficiency that we've been seeing. But I think the question we want to ask is, what if this is the floor? I hope it's the floor. But 19 targets in 2 games, it cannot continue where it is right now. And I think the owner in your league that has Brian Thomas Jr. is probably very frustrated. So I think this is an opportunity to go get him. Number 4, 4 trade targets left in week 3. Number 4 is Omarion and Hampton. So these rookie running backs have not been great for us so far. Usually this is the type of situation, rookie running backs, rookie wide receivers, depending on where you drafted them, we'll get to another one in a second. They can be really nice buy lows early in the season. If, like, I guess basically what has changed, what has not changed. If the volume has not changed, but the efficiency hasn't been as good as we want, I think these are nice opportunities. So to me, the buy low opportunity is just opening. Or just opened for Omarion and Hampton. So week 2, he had basically an even split with Najee. He had a late fumble. I think that the optics kind of dip fast for players like this, especially when maybe the league, like your league mate or whoever drafted him, maybe mispriced him. So in week 1, though, he was the every down starter. 17 touches. Najee was kind of eased back in, all of those things, right? And the Chargers are 2-0. So, like, there's really no panic here. I think there's more room to feature the upside of this rookie after, like, basically kind of a cleanup week overall. So, the things that are true are team investment and talent. I'm not willing to abandon either of those things, right? He was the 22nd overall pick. They already signed him to 4 years, $17 million, big bonus. Like, that is feature back type of money, and we follow the money in these situations. He's not just going to be a rotational player in this offense. So obviously he got a lot of first team reps with Najee out as we entered the season. I mean, there's a chance still that, like, I think that Hampton is a much more superior player to Najee even right now. So is he going to be like that immediate difference maker? We haven't seen it yet. Normally we see this offense a lot more run heavy than it's been this year as well. So maybe that kind of regresses back to the mean also. So I think we get a nice bounce back. So we're buying the bounce, basically. Let's say that. We're buying the bounce. So this offensive line has definitely improved in the offseason. I still think he's going to get the volume long term in this season to be a really nice fantasy asset. So I think there's a chance, though, at least this week, like, we know this Denver offense or this Denver defense is strong, but they did just give up 215 scrimmage yards to Jonathan Taylor. So it could be a nice reset here if they end up giving him some volume, right? So I think this is probably one of the last chances to, like, buy before the roll locks in. So the roll locks, price goes up. So this one feels like a pretty easy bet. Not a lot has changed on, like, basically what people are drafting him on. We just haven't quite had the reveal yet. Number 3, Chris Olave. This is one that he felt so underpriced most of the fantasy lead up that I think now, like, if you have Olave sitting on your bench, or maybe you have him in your flex, something like that, we have to figure out what to do with this guy, right? Similar to some of the other guys we've talked about today, we've had wide receiver 1 usage, 23 targets through 2 games, but we've only basically had the actual production of a wide receiver 33 overall. So in PPR leagues, at least. So I think this is like a buy low opportunity, leading the team in targets in week 1 and week 2. He went 7. So the yardage in general, like, isn't as relevant to me. I think it's the bankable volume we're getting with the targets. I guess we're getting in before the touchdowns show up. That's, like, almost always going to be a really nice trade target, someone that's seeing volume but hasn't been scoring touchdowns yet. And then Kellen Moore. Nothing has changed about Kellen Moore and why we liked this offense going into the season. Obviously, their defense is terrible. Their quarterback situation is not good. but Moore's offenses rank top 8 in plays per game every season. So more snaps, more routes, more targets for Olave, all of those things, right? These are like the macro things that we're focused on. So he does like to kind of flag those like RPO first read concepts, and it gives a pretty nice slot bump to Olave. He might get more of these easier high percentage looks. Like that's baked into the scheme. So yeah, while the quarterback room is definitely volatile, Moore's history is like basically volume regardless of personnel because he earns targets. So I think that holds even if like his efficiency isn't great throughout the season. I think there's still some upside here if you have a frustrated owner, similar to the BTJ stuff. Also, this soft schedule. We've talked about this a decent amount as well. The NFL's easiest passing schedule. So softer secondaries is only going to amplify kind of an already elite target flow in this offense. So Rattler hasn't been amazing, but I also think that he's been better than people realized. His quarterback rating has actually been pretty decent. So the efficiency stuff hasn't been horrendous. The offense looked a lot better than I think a lot of people thought they would be, especially in week 2. So I think it's trending towards like competency at least. So anytime you see like wide receiver 1 volume, wide receiver 33 points, it's really just a matter of time before we see this catch up, right? From a fantasy perspective. So I'm trading for Olave as soon as I can because I think eventually those touchdowns are going to go back in his favor and we're going to start to see a little bit more efficiency on the volume as well. And then when that happens, you're never going to be able to get him at the price that he's at currently. This one pains me, but I still think he's one of the best guys you can trade for right now. Ashton Jeanty. Hear me out. So if someone drafted Ashton Jeanty in the first round, they might be, well, they're definitely frustrated, but they might be a little bit hesitant to make a move just because of the reason they drafted him, right? And some of this stuff is still intact. The workhorse role. Shocker, the trade targets video is going to include running backs that have workhorse roles, but also have like a good amount of volume coming their way. That's the only thing that really matters. So the usage is elite. Bad game scripts, that's been tough, right? The problem that I've had with Ashton Jeanty is they haven't been able to leave him on the field for pass protection, which is not good. He's been losing touches to like Zamir White. So yeah, the workhorse role is still there and intact, but there's like certain situations where he just has to play better and he has to be, I guess they have to be able to count on him in every situation. So the things that have not changed, elite prospect. I got to figure that out. There's a button on this that switches that. There we go. Elite What is that? Elite prospect. What else? What else hasn't changed here? Like, what are some reasons that we should be going after a guy like this? It's similar to what we were just talking about, right? Like the overall investment of this offense. Raiders drafted him to be like the offensive engine, right? And Brock Bowers banged up. Geno Smith not playing well. So the workload is basically by design, not by chance, is what I'm getting at. So talent plus volume. Is usually all we need at the position, right? So coming into the NFL, nearly 2,000 yards after contact. So that level of tackle breaking paired with the NFL's like highest projected carry share in general. I mean, it's just going to lead to some eventual blow up weeks. I don't think he's Trent Richardson 2.0. So the question, game script. What happens? What happens if it flips, guys? What happens if it flips? The Commanders just gave up 84 yards and a touchdown to Josh Jacobs. I think this might potentially be the spot that Jeanty turns like that elite usage into elite production. So I think we got to buy now before that breakout because I think it could be soon. He's too good. He's too good for it not to happen for this guy. The last guy that we're going to talk about, one of my favorite players to draft in the offseason. And I think a lot of this has not changed as well. It's Drake London. We're trading for Drake London. We're trading for Drake London. If there's a frustrated manager out there, if you can trade 2 guys for 1, I think he's one of my favorite 2-for-1 trades. He's the clear alpha in the passing game on a fast-paced team, which is going to lead to volume and all of those things, right? So in Penix starts, 8, 13, 18, those are the targets that he had at the end of last year. 2 100-yard games. Ceiling is absolutely real with this combination. So Penix, ceiling, still there. I think one thing is the defense has been a little bit better than people expected. Like, they looked good last week. I was at the game with the Vikings, or maybe McCarthy was that bad. But the Falcons in general, the pace is good. 7th plays per game, 4th in neutral pace, more snaps, more volume, always good. So the box score is how you're going to trade for him. 19 targets, but only 103 yards through 2 games. So the volume is there, but the payoff hasn't really hit yet. And that's going to be your edge when you trade for him. So the small negatives that we can kind of bake into this as well. He had a fumble in week 2. He had kind of a little bit of like a shoulder thing that he was working through. I think that in general, this is almost like it's not a role problem. It's almost just like we need a little bit of a reset and a few things to kind of go his way for him to get back on pace. I think of all the guys we talk about today, he is the easiest path to getting back to where like the range people drafted him at. So he's obviously just completely destroyed Kyle Pitts in the pecking order of where the target funnel is. Another really strong passing schedule, 6th easiest passing schedule. So softer secondaries, turn to targets, turn to points, all of those things. It's a play action system. I think just like stable protection is going to keep this at a good spot. So even if like they end up skewing run heavy in certain games, they ran a ton against the Vikings, I think this offense still wants to run through London and through Penix long term, right? So to me, this is the final discount. And a guy that we should absolutely be trading for. If there's someone in your league that has been frustrated, this is like the guy that I want to leave before week 1. At least attempting to kick some tires. All right, go out there, make me proud, swing some trades. Let me know in the comments if you get anything done, and do me a solid. Check out DraftKings Pick 6. Not sure how long that promo is going to last. Use code HOLK at sign up, but I'm having a blast on the app so far, and hit subscribe. See you next time.